Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm running down my top 10 older games I still play every year. These are the games that have stood the test of time for me. Each one I've played every year for a decade or more. I think that makes these games special amongst all my favorite games. Not only are they timeless and replayable, but they actually consistently hit the table, which is something I can't say for many games. Okay, let's go ahead and jump on in and get started with my number 10, Love Letter. Love Letter is obviously a classic deduction card game that everyone knows about. It single-handedly launched the microgame subgenre, which is still going strong today. It came out in 2012, and I've been playing it for at least a decade. I played it a handful of times this year, and it still holds up. It consistently comes out at game nights if you just need something either before a big game as you're waiting for people to come, or after a big game and you just want something to wind down with. It works great for that. If you don't know, this is a game with only 16 cards, I believe. You win by either knocking every other player out of the round through card play, or by holding the highest numbered card when the deck runs out. There's tons of different versions of the game which have slightly different rules or different cards. There's versions that let you play with a higher player count and add like twice as many cards. There's a Cthulhu version, and it's just a really entertaining mix of luck and deduction that creates a lot of funny moments and can really just play out in many different ways. Excellent game. That's my number 10, Love Letter. Number 9 is Dominion. This is another classic card game that everyone knows about that essentially invented deck building as a gameplay mechanism. Now every other game has deck building incorporated into it, but Dominion does it best as just a simple, quick-playing, streamlined game. It came out in 2009, and there are still expansions coming out to this day. This was really one of my first board gaming obsessions. I played it about a dozen years ago, I believe, and just got so hooked. It was just, we were playing it, game night after game night after game night for hours on end. Now, I don't do that anymore, but it always comes out every year. And honestly, I have stopped getting expansions after like the first 8 or so. But really all you need is a few. You need like Prosperity, Seaside, and Intrigue, and you're good to go with the base game. And that's just an infinite amount of replayability. So that's number 9, Dominion. Number 8 is Kanban, or its sequel, Kanban EV, which is what I'm showing here. Kanban is a heavy worker placement game, and it came out about a decade ago in 2014, I believe, and I got it right away. It was easily the heaviest game that I had played at that time, and I just loved it. I really fell in love with its tight and confrontational worker placement system. You basically have these few departments that you're trying to get into to work. There's only 2 spots that you can go in each department. So there's only like 10 spots for your workers. And you only have one worker, and you move all the workers in order. In the original game, it was from left to right, and in the new version, it's from top to bottom. And so you have to move your worker from where it is to a new spot, but all the other workers are still in those spots, so you can't go there. So you have to go somewhere new and into a new department. And so it's this timing thing as you're jockeying around, trying to get the stuff that you need to build and test these cars. It's one of the more claustrophobic Euros that I've ever played. And then I also just love the theme of the office politics as you're trying to impress your demanding boss. You go to these meetings and brag about your accomplishments. And with the new version, there's a solo mode, which adds to the replayability. Easily one of the best heavy Euros of all time. That's Kanban, my number 8. Number 7 is Dungeon Petz. This is another worker placement Euro game that is highly thematic, but it's not nearly as complex as Kanban. You take the role of a pet store owner for these adorable baby monsters, and you have to meet their needs. So you'll be acquiring appropriate cages and cleaning out those cages, feeding them, entertaining them, controlling their anger and magical outbursts. And it's done with another brilliant worker placement system that I'm surprised I don't see more often in other games. You have all these imp workers, and you group them together into these separate parties. And the number of imps is how strong that party is. So you can either make a lot of weak parties or a few really strong parties. And the strength of the party determines the turn order for the worker placement. So if there's something you really need, you can build a really strong party that will hopefully go early in turn order, and you can go to that spot and get it. But if you'd rather just have a bunch of different actions, you can get weaker parties and then just clean up all the stuff that no one else takes. And really, it's just one of like 5 unique, clever systems in this game. In terms of just brilliant game design, Dungeon Petz might be up there as my number 1 of all time. It's just so clever. There's this card management system where it just makes the pets that you're taking care of feel alive. They have their own personalities, and you get attached to these little cardboard pets. This is just a game that keeps coming out and hitting the table because of how satisfying it is to play. A game that should get talked about more. That's my number 7, Dungeon Petz. Number 6 is Ginkgopolis. Ginkgopolis is an abstract tile-laying city-building game where players use cards and tiles in order to expand the central city outwardly as well as up. And you're sort of creating these districts, and you want to have majorities in these districts in order to score points at the end of the game. And it can be really cutthroat and really swingy because you can build on top of people's buildings and then kick them out. And the amount of influence that you have in a region is based on how tall your buildings are. The taller they are, the more influence. But I think what really gets this to the table is how quickly it plays, because everyone is making their moves simultaneously. And then your cards are revealed, and then they sort of resolve in turn order. So there's very little downtime. You're constantly playing, drafting cards, trying to anticipate where your opponents are going, trying to manage your resources and your tiles. It really is a brilliant game that I was lucky enough to get my hands on a copy of it back in 2012 when it came out. And I think it went out of print for a while. But now it's back. I think you can now get this game again. I highly recommend giving it a look, especially if you like sort of more confrontational, area majority, and tile laying games. It also has a really fun solo mode. I've done a full playthrough of it, in fact, on the channel, so you can check that out. I also did a full playthrough of Kanban EV. I forgot to mention that. So there you go. That's number 6, Ginkgopolis. Number 5 is La Granja. La Granja is a farming and trading game that uses one of my favorite mechanisms, multi-use cards. The cards in this game can be used in 4 different ways by actually physically tucking it under one of the 4 sides of your player board. So you can place it at top for a contract that you need to fulfill. You can place it through the bottom for a special ability that you'll have for the rest of the game. You can place it on the right side in order to build up your farm, adding to your income or the number of cards you can have and stuff like that. Or you can put it on the left side in order to build out your fields and, be able to grow more crops. But that's just one of the aspects of this game. There's also a great dice drafting phase, which is another mechanism I love. You have area majority, contract fulfillment. There's a lot going on with this game, but it plays really smoothly. It has this really interesting free-flowing kind of feel as well, because a lot of the things that you can do are sort of free actions. And in the original game, which came out in 2014, there's a very simple solo mode that I actually find quite fun to play, because it kind of just lets you pretty much just play and get to mess around with the cards, and you don't have to worry too much about a solo opponent. Now, there's a deluxe master set that came out that introduced a new solo mode, and I've been meaning to get this onto the channel and do a playthrough. It's going to happen this year, I promise. But I've been playing this older version for 10 years and loving it. This is one that probably deserves more attention than it gets. That's my number 5, La Granja. Number 4 is Troya. Troya is a quirky, medium-weight dice game where players are kind of working together in order to defend the famous French city over 4 centuries, but in the end, you want to be the one with the most points. Everyone gets a bunch of dice to roll at the beginning of each round, There are these 3 different colors of dice. And then you're going to use those dice and your workers in order to take actions that are on cards on the board. And each round, new cards come out, giving you new actions. The cool thing is you can actually take 1 to 3 of your dice and group them together to do an action. You add up the pips and then you divide by a certain value, and that's the number of times you can take the action. And you can use fame in order to manipulate your dice results, but you can also use money in order to buy other people's dice. So if you didn't roll very well and someone rolled really good, you can just pay them to use their dice instead of your own, which makes this game incredibly interactive. And that's really what keeps it coming back to the table. You really care what the other players are doing. There's also this brilliant thing where there's a hidden scoring condition that everyone has, but everyone's going to score it. So you need to spend all game watching what the other players are doing, trying to deduce what their scoring condition might be. It adds this extra layer of intrigue to the game, which really makes it work. And the whole thing plays incredibly quickly. I highly recommend checking this one out. And like a lot of these games, you can actually play them online at Board Game Arena. This is one that I play on there almost every other month. That's my number 4, Troya. Number 3 is Castles of Burgundy. This is another game where you use dice in order to take actions in a very different way than Troya. Here the focus is on tile laying. You're going to be drafting tiles from these numbered depots and then placing them out onto your duchy board. You have to play them adjacent to previously placed tiles in the correct colored areas. And you're trying to fill up these areas as fast as you can in order to earn points. And each tile has an ability that triggers when you play it. This is one of the most classic, beloved, medium weight Euro games in existence. I think because of just how satisfying the puzzle is of using these 2 dice, trying to figure out how to use them most efficiently. You have a little bit of mitigation with these worker tiles, but not too much. And so the decision space is nice and small. It's just incredibly satisfying. And it works so well at 2 players. That's my vast majority of plays of Castles of Burgundy over the years has been at 2. Occasionally at 3, and now with the new version, the special edition, there's a great solo mode. I mean, the game came out in 2011. This new version has just revitalized it. It means it's probably going to get played another 10 years. There you go, my number 3, Castles of Burgundy. Number 2 is At the Gates of Loyang. Unlike most of the games on this list, this is a game that I play mostly solo. And I've been playing it mostly solo for the last dozen years or so. That's rare because most of the games that I play solo are much more recent than this. This game came out in 2010 with an incredibly solid solo mode. That's very rare. In fact, this is one of the oldest solo games that I play. This is just a comfort game for me. When I need something with a little bit of meat, but I don't want it to be too overwhelming, I'll often pull out At the Gates of Loyang because it's just so much fun. This is another, farming and trading strategy game. It's a Rosenberg game, so of course it is. But it's got to be his most unique game. It just doesn't feel like any of the other ones. Mostly because your turns are so free-flowing. You just have this long list of different actions you can take, and you can just do them in any order, as many times as you want. And it just creates this really relaxing vibe. You just go, you buy and sell vegetables, and you trade with these market stalls, and you use all these veggies in order to plant and harvest fields and fulfill short and long-term contracts. And then at the end of each round, you have to buy victory points. And it's really clever because for your first victory point that you buy of each round, it just costs 1 money. But then for each additional one, it costs whatever the victory point value is that you're going to. So if you have 5 victory points, you can move up to 6 for 1 coin. But then to move up to 7, you have to pay 7 coins. And then to 8, you have to pay 8 more coins. So as the game goes along, it gets harder and harder to move up that victory point track. You need more and more money. But you've also built out your operation more and more. If you want to see what I'm talking about, I've done a full playthrough of this game, as well as Castles of Burgundy. Again, I forgot to mention that. You can go check out those playthroughs. But yeah, this is a game I'm just going to be playing every year for the rest of my life. I never get tired of it. That's At the Gates of Loyang, my number 2. And my number one is no surprise. It's Robinson Crusoe Adventures on the Cursed Island. I talk about this game all the time, so I'm not going to blather about it here too much, but this is the ultimate forever game. I think everyone has that one game that is just, for whatever reason, their game. It's the game that defines them. It's the game that they will play for the rest of their lives. It's just a game that speaks to their interests and their style of gaming more than any other. And that's Robinson Crusoe for me. It came out in 2012. I got it immediately. It took me 3 full games in order to fall in love. And then since then, it's just been nonstop play. Easily the game that I've played the most of. It's just got so many things that I love. Survival adventure, brilliant co-op and solo modes, scenario-based, the perfect balance of strategy and luck, emergent storytelling that fits perfectly in with the mechanisms. It's one of the handful of games I'll call a masterpiece, an absolute work of art. It's the game that I turn to when I'm getting burned out on the hobby, when I need to remind myself about how much I love board games. I already have 4 full playthroughs on the channel. I plan many more. This is one of the only games where I promise I'm going to have a playthrough of it every single year. And now with the Book of Adventures expansion, never going to run out of unique scenarios to try. Sorry to have another top 10 list with Robinson Crusoe at the top, but it was unavoidable. It's my number one, my favorite older game that I still play each and every year. So there you go, 10 amazing games. But I want to hear from you. What are some games that are over a decade old that you play each and every year without fail? I want to hear what they are. Please post your comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.